All right, good morning. On behalf of the graduating chief resident classes, it is my honor to introduce our selected Grand Round speaker, Dr. Nathan Baggett. Dr. Baggett is an emergency medicine physician at Regions Hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota, where he completed his residency and is currently completing a fellowship in medical education and obtaining a master's degree in academic medicine. Nate grew up in Ankeny, Iowa, and worked as a paramedic and firefighter with the Ankeny Fire Department, while completing his undergraduate studies in rhetoric at Drake University. Despite earning an award as the top graduating student in politics, Nate's ultimate goal was to become a physician. And after college, he moved to Madison to complete medical school here at the University of Wisconsin. In 2017, Nate was nominated to serve as the commencement speaker for his medical school class. In standard Nate Baggett fashion, he delivered the speech less than 24 hours after he himself was discharged from an inpatient admission at UW Hospital. In the spring of 2018, after a year filled with unexpected challenges, Nate matched with our class as an incoming general surgery resident at Wisconsin. I first met Nate 7 years ago. I was struck by his unassuming demeanor, mischievous personality, and zest for life. After the match, I had come across an online blog that Nate and his wife Ann shared, detailing their unbelievable story. I felt humbled to be in the same space as someone so strong. This feeling would only grow as I got to know Nate and Ann over the years and witnessed their astonishing tenacity, kindness, and courage. Many of you in the audience are familiar with and have personally impacted Nate's incredible journey. We are so thankful that Nate is here with us today to share his perspectives on Extra Innings, Reflections on Living After 3 Liver Transplants. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nate Baggett.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for inviting me back here. It's a huge honor to be with you all today. As Dr. Kreco said, my name is Nate Baggett. I'm an emergency physician at Regions Hospital in St. Paul. This is the level 1 adult and pediatric trauma center that serves the eastern Twin Cities and a large part of northern and western Wisconsin. We're a busy urban ER in downtown St. Paul that has over 100,000 visits per year. We're also the community and trauma surgery site for the University of Minnesota surgery residency. As part of my fellowship in medical education, I'm doing a master's degree in academic medicine through the University of Southern California Keck School of Medicine. In June, I'll be finishing up my fellowship, and I'll be staying on as faculty, splitting my time between academic shifts at our level 1 trauma center and then working at critical access hospitals scattered across western Wisconsin that are often like 5 or 7 bed, tiny little EDs. So many of you have heard parts of my story, or at least have met me before, but others are probably wondering, why is there an ER doctor here to talk to you today? I have to be honest that as an ER doc, I'm used to be texting you with consults and requests. So it's a little surprising to get Dr. Minter's email last fall, but it's a huge honor and I appreciate you guys inviting me back. For those of you who don't know, I was briefly one of you. I matched into the categorical residency program in 2018 with this graduating class, and unfortunately had to go on medical leave shortly after these photos were taken. But it's great to be back with this class, and it was so fun last night getting to have dinner with you all. Congratulations to the graduates. It's so exciting to hear what you're all off to do. But the real reason I'm here is to talk about my experience as a patient in this hospital. Through the gift of organ donation and the incredible care of the teams at UW, I've been given the gift of life. I'm here to tell you my story and share the lessons I've learned about living with and after critical illness. By the end of this talk, I want you to understand more about the patient experience of critical illness and for you to be able to apply lessons for living, which include living in the moment, living with gratitude, and living with hope. I have no disclosures, but I do have a word of caution. Some of you cared for me and probably know parts of the story better than I do. I'll be sharing my recollections of what happened, and if they differ from what you remember, just remember that I was on a lot of opioids at the time. So my story starts in 2008 when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. At the time, I was a college student and was working as a firefighter and paramedic. For the most part, my UC was well controlled and really didn't think much about it. About 2 years after being diagnosed with UC, I was at a routine GI follow-up appointment and had labs done that showed that my LFTs were elevated. This prompted an MRCP and ultimately led to the diagnosis of primary sclerosing cholangitis. The GI doctor gave me this diagnosis over the phone. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I remember what I heard. He said, "You have this disease with no cure and no treatment, and I think you need a liver transplant." When I hung up, I was alone in a college dorm, and it felt like my life had ended. It felt like a death sentence. I felt like I lost all hope. I remember I turned on my favorite album, turned off the lights, and I just wept. But that initial grim prognosis turned out to be a little off. I was set up with a hepatologist, had an ERCP done, had a surveillance plan, and was told to live my life. He restored some hope. So I did. I continued to work as a firefighter. I traveled. I met my future wife. I graduated from college. And most importantly, I was accepted into medical school here at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. Amid some fatigue and referred pain, my primary symptom was pruritus. I was consumed by a constant, miserable itch. It felt like I couldn't scratch it because it was coming from so deeply within me. My palms and soles burned, and I scratched until my skin broke and bled. Sleep was nearly impossible. But I was able to get through medical school with the occasional ERCP. Shortly after starting school, I met Michael Lucy, my hepatologist, and in one of our first conversations, I remember talking about the need for transplant. And we talked that if it was ever going to be needed, hopefully it'd be far off in the future, that I'd be able to complete medical school and residency like my peers. Unfortunately, as I studied for step one, I got sicker and sicker. And by the end of June, the day after I took step one, I was admitted to the hospital with cholangitis. I was discharged just in time to start my third year clerkships, despite feeling pretty miserable. I trudged on because I was worried that if I stopped, I wouldn't be able to start again. This only lasted for a few weeks until I was on a rotation in the neuro ICU. As we were rounding, I felt the attending's intense stare as a peer was presenting. So I started trying to look more engaged. I stood up a little straighter. I started nodding my head enthusiastically. I pretended to take notes. But after rounds, Dr. Meadow took me to the side and said, "Are you okay? You're very jaundiced." I shrugged it off and said that it's okay. This is something that happens sometimes. I have this liver thing. But I did quietly go down to the outpatient lab to have labs drawn. And after I got my labs drawn, I hopped on my bike and rode home, and then got a call from the hospital saying that I needed to come back because my INR was nearly 6. I'm glad I wore my helmet that day. So I was ultimately admitted and underwent a transplant evaluation and was listed. However, with treatment, my INR improved and consequently my MELD score declined. So I was discharged and life on the waiting list became my new reality. I didn't feel great, but I also felt like I was wasting time. I had days where I felt okay and other days where I felt miserable, but would I feel worse on a clerkship? Or would the distraction of being on a clerkship actually help me to get through? So I went back, and one by one, I was able to complete clerkship after clerkship. That fall, a few months after being listed for transplant, I married Anne, my wonderful, strong, and resilient wife, who's here with me, hiding in the back row tonight, or this morning. I don't know if she knew what she was really committing to when she said the words "in sickness and in health." As my third year went on, I got sicker and sicker. It was clear that I wasn't going to be able to complete a residency without a transplant, but my MELD score lingered in a range where I was never going to get a liver. I was stuck. And that's when we started discussing the possibility of a live donor transplant. Unbeknownst to me, my cousin Allie told me that she'd always dreamed of being a donor. When I heard this, I stopped her and said that this is a big deal. It's a big surgery. It's not just a kidney, but she was certain she wanted to do it. And she came to Madison and was evaluated and approved to be my donor. With her lined up to donate, I plan to finish all my rotations early in my 4th year and plan to do the live donor surgery in March. It was important to me to have completed the requirements for medical school before going to surgery. That meant as my peers eagerly anticipated their match day, graduation, and starting residency, all I could think about was feeling better with a transplant. This is where hope plays such a powerful role in the life of a patient. For me, the prospect of a transplant meant so much. It meant an end to the itching, the fatigue, and the pain. Going into my first transplant, I hoped for a future where I could return to my training and my wife and I could have a life that felt a little bit more normal than life on the waiting list. And at first, that's what we got. My first memory of waking up in the TLC was not itching. I went into surgery with bleeding wounds on my arms and legs from how incessantly I itched. But when I woke up in the TLC, I didn't feel any of that. I had a sense of relief that it had worked. Things seemed to be going great. My family and I were relieved that my cousin was doing well, and I felt better than I had in years. I was up walking the halls, I was eating, and I think we'd even started to talk about the possibility of discharge in a few days. And that's about when I posted this picture on social media. Hope. This is what we had hoped for. A smooth surgery for me and my cousin, and a recovery that gave me a taste of what a new life with a new liver might feel like. So I posted this to show family and friends that I had been doing well. But sometimes hopes get derailed. The next morning I woke up and my labs had spiked and I had bile in my drains. I was rushed down to an ultrasound, and it was clear to me that the normal reassuring pulsatile waveform I'd seen on previous Dopplers was not there. So in what I guess must be a rare event, I texted Josh from ultrasound saying, "Dude, my artery's down." Moments later, I was being rushed from the imaging to the OR for a thrombectomy. The next few weeks became a blur of trips between TLC and B46. I have some brief memories, like 2 of the transplant fellows just sitting in my room in the TLC just to chat. But for the most part, my recollections come from my wife's photos and her diligent notes. Complications mounted. I got to know our infectious disease colleagues well as they managed bacteremia, sepsis, abscesses. The surgeons in IR chased biliary leaks, biomas, and placed drains in abscess. Sometime in there, I was found to have a PE. And my weight dropped from 190 pounds to 105 pounds, and we started TPN. In the midst of all that, I graduated medical school and was honored to be the commencement speaker. As Dr. Kreco said, I was too weak to be able to stand to give the speech, so I had to give it from a chair. And I think there were at least a few deans and administrators of the medical schools who were worried that I wasn't going to be able to get through the whole talk, which thankfully is not a concern today. It was good to have a couple transplant surgeons standing by in the wings because my PTC failed that morning, and a few hours after I graduated, I was back here going to IR for a drain exchange. In the course of just a few months, my hopes as a patient had been shifting wildly. From hope for overall better health and return to normalcy with a transplant to a simple hope for survival, relief from pain, a nice day out, and maybe just a cracker or a little ice cream as we faced more and more complications. Despite our best efforts as my peers left to start residency, it became clear that we were not going to be able to salvage the liver that my cousin had given me. In June 2017, 4 months after my first transplant, I received a second liver transplant from a deceased donor named Corey. Corey was 15 years old when she died after an ATV accident here at American Family Children's Hospital. A few months before her death, she had learned about organ donation through her driver's ed course. And when she got her learner's permit, she checked the box to be a donor and told her dad that, "I want to be an organ donor one day." He told her that that won't happen for years. Sadly, just a couple months later, her family were in the position to honor that wish and made the heroic decision to share the gift of life. Thankfully, the second transplant seemed to be more like what we had hoped for the first time. I woke up in the TLC feeling great again. My recovery was faster. I started feeling better each day and was getting my strength back. My weight came back on with a little credit to prednisone and probably a lot of credit to Culver's. We faced some bumps in the road, but this time they were relatively a little less dramatic, like CMV and aspergillosis. Relatively. I finally felt good enough to apply to residency and cautiously think about the future. So I applied with this year's graduating class. Life seemed to be back on track. The future we were hoping for finally seemed to be in reach. I had a functioning liver and could start thinking about what my life might look like as a resident. That all changed about 6 months after my second transplant when I developed rejection. We tried steroids and thymoglobulin, but despite all that, I was getting sicker and sicker. On the morning of match day, I came down to open my envelope from B46. So just a few months before I was scheduled to start residency, the transplant team made the decision that I should be relisted for transplant, which is probably the last thing a program director wants to hear about their incoming resident. You can say that learning in residency is inherently experiential, and I just misunderstood what side of the experience I was supposed to be on. Around this time, the burden of being stuck in these seemingly never-ending complications was taking its toll. As a medical student, I had seen the profound benefit that the palliative care team had for patients facing critical illness. When I first brought this up, my surgeons, who I love and who took phenomenal care of me, were resistant. I remember being told, "You're not giving up, right? We can get you through this. We just have to get you another liver." And I had to reassure them that yes, in fact, I did want to pursue another liver for the sake of my future, but I also wanted the support of the palliative care team in the now. I know you all know this, but palliative care is not hospice. The incredible thing about what you do as surgeons is that you routinely bring people back from the brink. You can take some of the sickest people in the hospital and make them better. And this is especially true in transplant, where a coagulopathic crashing patient can be better with a new liver. But as patients, we are trying to live in that liminal space of being a patient and being sick. While I wanted nothing more than to be better, I also wanted help living life to the fullest in the midst of unpredictability. The palliative care team helped us to navigate living in the moment despite being so sick. They recognized that the struggle and gave additional support to me and my wife. They helped us to find reasons to hope of any and all sizes. Asking for that palliative care consult turned out to be fortuitous because despite all the complications we had faced, I don't think we were ready for what was still to come. In September 2018, I received my third liver from another young deceased donor named Justin. Justin was my age when he died, and much like my second donor, his parents chose to share the gift of life amid their grief. In the top right photo, that's actually the night his parents gifted my daughter his childhood rocking horse that they had restored. And we have a wonderful relationship with their incredible family. It's amazing what a functioning liver can do. Before this transplant, my bilirubin was in the 30s and the itching had returned. Within days of waking up with my new liver, the itchiness had melted away. I was walking in the laps in the TLC, feeling like I was on the road to recovery. It finally felt like the third time was the charm. But unfortunately, as it had before, hopes got derailed. This time, it was a pancreatic leak, bowel perforation, and bleeding. It meant weeks and weeks bouncing back and forth to the TLC, to the OR, to IR, and to B46. At the height of those complications, I remember being rushed from the TLC to the OR with blood pouring into my drains. As I was moved over to the OR table, I remember thinking to myself that if this is it, if I die now, I'll drift to sleep with anesthesia and I just wouldn't wake up. I was in pain and my prospects felt grim. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong, and it felt like maybe it was my time. Instead, I woke up later that weekend in the TLC, surrounded by family and a half dozen friends who on a moment's notice had flown across the country to Madison to be with me and more so my wife. In the midst of that suffering, I sat in a hospital bed surrounded by some of my best friends telling stories, reminiscing and laughing. When they left on Sunday, I sat there with my wife, thinking that that was pretty wonderful. And if things don't get better, we were so lucky to have had this weekend. Still, complications continued. Josh has always said that life is a delicate balance between bleeding and clotting. And that sentence could easily summarize my transplant journey. In particular, my third transplant really bore that out as we continue to struggle with clotting in my hepatic artery. Over the following months, my hepatic artery would clot. I would get a thrombectomy or get TPA, have a stent placed, and that would clot, and the whole cycle would repeat again and again. After months of back and forth, things culminated after an angiogram, which had become a routine IR procedure for me. Dr. Krecko was actually over at our house that night when I had sudden onset abdominal pain. We rushed to the ED, then to CT, and then it's never a good sign when you come from CT back to the resuscitation room. But I had a ruptured pseudoaneurysm. I was taken to the OR for what I thought was going to be a quick case, and instead was intubated for 3 days and taken back to the OR multiple times. After one of my surgeries, one of the surgeons told my wife that never have I seen so much bleeding and so little clotting. When I woke up, I remember my family was sitting around me quietly, and in a hushed tone, someone asked, "Are you going to tell him?" So my wife leaned in and said that in the course of trying to get the bleeding to stop, they obviously had to reverse my anticoagulation. And in doing so, my artery went down, and I now had no arterial blood supply to my liver. In talking with the surgeons, we learned that my options were severely limited, that we should expect complications to mount, and that we would try to manage them as best we could, but that we'd ultimately just be buying me time. One thing was clear to me is that I didn't want to die in this hospital. If this was it, I didn't want to spend more time sitting around here waiting for things to get worse. When I was well enough to be discharged, we went home with a plan to try to live life as much as we could. With the help of the palliative care team, we found different things to hope for now, like nice weather for a short walk, or an appetite enough to eat my favorite meal. I did want to be ready for things to get worse, so we met with the Grace Hospice to talk about what that might look like, and we did other things to get my affairs in order. But we also planned a party. My 30th birthday was just a couple weeks after my artery went down, and while no one would say it, there was a not so subtle subtext that the party was a going away party for me. We ended up having hundreds of friends and families and doc from the hospital come to join us for celebration. But what we feared didn't come to fruition. It's hard to explain, but as we checked my labs week after week and month after month, my labs remained normal. Ultrasound and MRA showed that my artery was still down, but my liver seemed and seems to be working. We proceeded cautiously. Months later, we removed a PTC, and for the first time in 2 years, I had no lines or drains in my body. So many of these complications were so dramatic in their arrival that's a little baffling how slowly normalcy can return. As we strung together more and more normal days, we wondered, how long will this last? When will my next admission be? We kept our hospital bags packed, ready for a return at any moment. That's another thing about being a patient with critical illness. You're never just better now. There's not a single point in time where it feels like things are normal or that you're told that now things will be okay. The constant fears and vigilance just slowly fades, but never goes away completely. And now it's 6 years after that. My wife and I have our beautiful daughter, Lucille. I started and finished residency. We travel. We enjoy both the big and small moments of life. Our hopes have ebbed and flowed, shrunk and expanded, and they continue to. That's living. So that's my story, and these are some of the numbers that tell just parts of that story. Over 2 full years of bouncing between home and here, hundreds of days in the hospital. That's what you all helped me get through, and I appreciate that. It's hard for an experience like this to not give you a little perspective, both on life and what it means to be a patient. So I'd like to take the rest of today's talk to share with you some of the lessons I've learned from being sick. To be clear, I didn't have some huge spiritual awakening after this. I consider myself to be a pretty normal guy with just some really big scars on my belly. We'll spend the next 15 minutes talking about what this experience has taught me, about how to live in the moment, live with gratitude, and live with hope. So the first lesson is to live in the moment. As a medical student, I had this idea of momentum. Getting through college, getting into medical school, graduating, getting into residency, getting a job. This felt like a treadmill. that was going towards this ultimate goal of becoming a physician and caring for patients. So I focused my attention ahead. Those of you about to graduate have been on this treadmill too. You're hopefully nearing the finish line and can maybe imagine how good it feels to get there. But the secret is that the treadmill doesn't stop. After finishing training, there will be career goals, research, academic positions. It keeps on coming. I was in my early 20s working as a firefighter when the department's chaplain introduced me to the poem, The Station by Robert Hastings. Even before my first transplant, this hung in our apartment, and it's something I've returned to time and time again. In fact, I quoted it in my medical school speech. In part, it reads, "Tucked away in our subconscious minds is an idyllic vision. We see ourselves on a long, long trip that almost spans the continent. We're traveling by passenger train, and out the windows we drink in the passing scenes of children waving at a crossing, of cattle grazing on a distant hillside, of row upon row of corn and wheat, of flatlands and valleys, of mountains and rolling hills. But uppermost in our minds is the final destination. On a certain day, at a certain hour, we will pull into the station. There will be bands playing and flags waving. And once we get there, so many wonderful dreams will come true. So many wishes will be fulfilled, and so many pieces of our life finally will be neatly fitted together like a completed jigsaw puzzle. How restlessly we pace the aisles, damning the minutes for loitering, waiting, waiting, waiting for the station. However, sooner or later, we must realize that there is no station, no one place to arrive at once and for all. The true joy of life is the trip. The station is only a dream. It constantly outdistances us. So stop pacing the aisles and counting the miles. Instead, climb more mountains, eat more ice cream, go barefoot oftener, swim more rivers, watch more sunsets, laugh more, and cry less. Life must be lived as we go along. The station will come soon enough." We've all heard heroic stories of physician self-sacrifice. As a medical student, I remember hearing of attending in the medical ICU rounding with an IV pole while he was undergoing chemotherapy. Or how many of you have come to work sick as a resident because you didn't want to let the team down? Heck, here I am in Gretchen's office working on some research while getting IV fluids or something. There's a place for momentum, for purposeful reasons to push forward, but there is no station. There's so much talk about the burnout crisis in medicine, and I wonder how much of this originates from within and from the way that we celebrate our own self-sacrifice for the profession. We as a community of physicians and healthcare providers must recognize a need to prioritize our well-being, to question the need for constant momentum, and make space for what we're feeling in the now. We need to create communities that welcome and support each other. Medicine is a team sport. That means sharing the workload, sharing the burden, stepping up when you're needed, and allowing others to step up for you. Your well-being can only take a back seat for so long before your ability to care and do your best work becomes impossible. For me, I was worried that any break in my momentum would make it so hard to come back that I wouldn't be able to. Looking back, I don't know if that was true because I never stopped to consider it. I was too busy pacing the aisles and counting the miles. What I do know is that giving myself time to heal, to take care of myself, to come to grips with what I went through has made me a better doctor for my patients. It made me a better physician, teacher, researcher, husband, and father. Making time for our own experiences, for our own struggles, helps us to identify with the experience and struggles our patients face. Yes, living in the moment often means slowing down, but not just to rest up or recuperate. It also means taking time to appreciate and cherish things that we'd otherwise miss. Climbing more mountains, eating more ice cream. As a Chicago Cubs fan, I watched a lot of baseball while I was in the hospital. As I got sicker and sicker, our focus increasingly became on taking advantage of the time I had left. My wife started describing that time as the extra innings of a baseball game. As she said, this is the part of the game where each play seems to matter more, when players really buckle down and the fans cheer even louder. For some patients, their extra innings equate to the idea of a bucket list filled with grand and extraordinary accomplishments to show that they conquered life. But that wasn't the case for me. When I was in the hospital, what I longed for most were some of the most mundane moments of life. A meal out with friends on a patio, a concert on a beautiful evening on the square, a walk on a beautiful summer day. At night, I remember lying in the hospital bed and being so sad, thinking that I might miss out on these simple everyday moments that make life richer. We've all likely been told that every day is special, but I've tried to make that more tangible through a meditation practice called mental noting. The concept of calmly naming what we experience. It's a soft internal way of recognizing what you're feeling. For example, if I was sitting out on the terrace right now, I might just note relaxing. And in the moments before I walked up to give this speech, I might have noted anxiety. Recently, my 4-year-old was chatting with me before bed about the drama from daycare and asking me important life questions like, what happened to the dinosaurs? And I found myself making a mental note of lucky, as in how lucky I am to be here for this. Especially for the trainees here, sometimes it's easy to imagine that these current moments aren't the moments to note, that there's not much to be present for just yet. You're looking ahead to the station, but some of the richest moments of life are happening today, are happening now. You just have to note them. I used to let a lot of life drift by unappreciated. I thought that the best moments of life happen at special events or on grand trips, or that those moments would come at some distant time. And I thought I needed to keep my focus forward or risk falling back. But you don't have to wait for better moments or sacrifice all the beauty of the now for a potential future. You shouldn't wait for the extra innings to play your heart out. Life must be lived as we go along. The station will come soon enough. My next lesson is to live with gratitude. It's an understatement to say that I'm a lucky guy. I imagine that for many of you in this room, after hearing the story and knowing all the complications I faced, that my presence today seems a little improbable. That makes me even more grateful for these extra innings every day. I can't leave here again without telling you about these 3 heroic donors who shared the gift of life with me and who made my ability to live with anything possible. This goes for my cousin Allie, who was brave and courageous in her unwavering willingness to undergo surgery to help me get better. And our deep, deep gratitude for my second and third donors and their families. At a time when their children were dying, they chose to share their organs and to give me some of the life that their loved ones had lost. And obviously, I can't emphasize enough the gratitude I have for my incredible wife, Anne. They say that choosing your partner is the most important decision you'll ever make, and I couldn't have chosen a better person to be on this journey with. Anne was an unshakable rock of support through every setback. She's an amazing partner, mother, adventure companion, speech editor, and is my favorite person to spend time with. She's the proof that I'm a lucky guy. I could not have gotten through this without her. Personally, gratitude has played such a powerful role in my life, and a growing body of work supports this. Dr. Robert Amons, a psychologist who has devoted his research to studying gratitude, says that gratitude heals, energizes, and changes lives. Is the prism through which we view life in terms of gifts, givers, goodness, and grace. Research shows that even a small act of gratitude can be impactful. Gratitude helps us to shift to a mindset where we recognize that good things often come from outside of ourselves. The New York Times highlighted multiple benefits that come from gratitude, which includes improved psychological well-being, strengthened relationships, and far-reaching benefits to those who witness expressions of gratitude. They describe gratitude as the gift that keeps on giving. I find that after my transplant, I recognize more ways I'm indebted to others, not just for the big, flashy things. We're all fortunate to have people around us who make our work and our training possible. For the residents, you're in the midst of years of grueling, all-encompassing training, supported along the way by family members, friends, teachers, and colleagues. Gratitude for their role in your life is vital. This is something that you can do today. I challenge you to take note of your peers, your colleagues, your family, and how they contribute to your happiness. And when you notice that, tell them, thank you for seeing that patient for me. Thanks for helping me finish that note. Mom or dad, I was stressed. Thanks for listening to me vent. Being precise in what you're thankful for doesn't make you doesn't just make you a pleasant colleague or friend. It also helps you to make your gratitude tangible. Gratitude isn't something to keep to yourself. Its greatest power comes from being shared. Seeing acts of gratitude between others benefits those who witness it. So with that in mind, and for your benefit, let me share some of my gratitude for UW Hospital and the teams who supported me along the way. The transplant surgeons obviously get a lot of credit for their efforts to save my life, which is credit that's well-deserved. None of this would be possible without their skill and expertise and tireless dedication to patients like me. I do have to say, at Tony's retirement party, I took this photo with all the fellows who cared for me over the years, and shows that I was an essential part of their curriculum for at least 6 classes of fellows, I think. I don't know if that's on a checklist for them, but it seemed like this entire hospital came together to keep me alive. From the IR doctors who tirelessly worked to cannulate a tiny little bile duct and who joined in the battle to keep my hepatic artery open, to the on-scene radiologists who read my studies, to the ID team who were unshakable in their efforts to keep infections at bay, to the surgical critical care teams who cared for me at my sickest, and the palliative care team who cared for me, or supported my wife and I through it all. And of course, to the wonderful nurses who were at the bedside every day. UW Hospital and the University of Wisconsin are special. What UW Health does is extraordinary. I don't know if I would have survived at another hospital. Your tenacious efforts to pursue every option and never give up got me through when the odds may have said I shouldn't. And for that, I'm so thankful to have been a patient here. And I'm thankful for what you do every day. You're lucky to train and work at a place that shows that remarkable efforts can lead to improbable results. And that's certainly something to be grateful for. Finally, if there's one lesson that's held true since I started this journey, it's that we should live with hope. Hope, the ability to believe in a better future, was central to my survival. Hope is the answer to how we lived life in the face of years of uncertainty. It's how my wife and I survived 18 months on the transplant waitlist. It's what motivated me over hundreds of days in the hospital to get out of bed, go for walks, and build my strength even when it hurt or I was tired. It's how we found a way to live life as everything seemed so grim. Hope is the feeling that things can get better, even when everything feels uncertain or overwhelming. In life, and especially in medicine, hope is what helps people keep going through pain, fear, or setbacks. Hope is not blind optimism that everything will be okay. In fact, hope is inherently grounded in reality. It means holding on to the possibility of healing, of comfort, of connection, or simply of one more better day. Certainly going into my first transplant, we hoped that things would go smoothly. I would discharge after a week or so and life would move on. A blissful and probably naive hope, where transplantation would be but a blip on the timeline of my life. But that hope quickly crumbled when we were faced with the reality of complications. At that point, we were forced to reevaluate our hopes. As I got sicker, our hopes became much more immediate. Instead of hoping for a complete return to health, we hoped for smaller things like a little uninterrupted sleep, some relief from pain, a regular diet order, or a visit from some friends. Finding these reasons to hope provided some light as we navigated the darkness and uncertainty of critical illness. When I was at my sickest, it was these seemingly small, maybe even inconsequential hopes that kept me going day in and day out. Waking up in pain in that tiny hospital room was hard. Waking up and seeing little improvement was hard. Waking up and knowing that I might be rushed to the OR was hard. But our hopes gave us something to hold on to. This is what makes having hope so powerful. Hope is not a passive or fixed ideal. It ebbs and flows in the moment. Hope is something that we must actively build and maintain. Well, ultimately, hope has to be internalized, it has to be believed. I don't know if I always could have found hope on my own. And so sometimes you have to find reasons that are external to you to find hope, like your family, your friends, or a spiritual community. That's what you can do as a physician. I will tell you what I've been saying since this all began, that hope is the most powerful currency we carry as physicians. Whether it's seeing a patient moments after a horrible trauma, guiding a patient through a complex cancer, supporting the parents of a child facing surgery, or just sticking with a guy going for his third liver transplant, you as physicians are a source of hope for your patients and their families. Your patients will be looking to you to offer hope in their darkest moments. Being sick is scary. It's hard not to be filled with fear when your future is so uncertain. But hope can be an antidote to these fears. As surgeons, you have the incredible ability to treat and heal the most complex diseases. But even when things aren't going as planned, you can help your patients hope for simple things, like a chance to sit outside, some relief from pain, or just that their physician will be compassionate and understanding. And when the options for treatment run out, hope need not. Our hopes can change from hoping for cures and treatment to hoping for more comfort, an end to suffering, or a chance to return home. Thank you for inviting me back home to Madison today. I'm so proud to be a Badger and to have spent so many wonderful years living in Madison. Thank you for giving me time to share these thoughts on living with you. My hope for today is that you do what you can to live in the moment, to live with gratitude, to live with hope, and to help your patients find hope. I once had a patient tell me that life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful, and this is something I often said as a patient. Life wasn't and isn't perfect. It's often difficult and stressful and exhausting and scary. But the true joy of life is the trip. I was so lucky to be surrounded by an incredible support system and the wonderful teams here at UW Hospital. My transplant journey certainly hasn't been perfect, but life has been and is pretty wonderful. Thank you.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
We are so lucky that you were here with us.
Thank you.
I'd love to open up the floor to any questions that anyone may have. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I guess I'll start. I have so many emotions. I'm so proud that you're here and you're back and you're with us. And I'll never forget that text you sent. That's first and only time a patient sent me a text. I was like, dude, your artery's out. And just so you know, I was like refreshing the scan on, as my fellows and partners know I do, but you were the only person who's ever gotten a result before me. And that, was the start of everything. You've taught me so much more than like I've ever given you. I think about you more than is healthy. I need to share that. And I think about Anne too, who's just like an angel and so great that she's here. And gosh, the way you kind of carried yourself, the way you maintain that hope. You taught me how wonderful a place this is. I'm blown away by how many people wanted to be there to help. Every division, every staff member at every level was willing to give up, anything of their time, to be a part of your care. And I think about that all the time. When I'm having bad days, I think about you. I hope that doesn't feel weird. There was actually a long period where like I didn't want to hear from you because every time like I got a text, I was so nervous that it was going to be some problem. Or every time I got a note from Michael about a visit, or I was just so nervous. So it actually took me a long time to heal from that.
I think now when I text you, it's mostly like pictures of Lucy. So
yeah.
Hopefully we're through that.
And actually, that's my biggest regret is that you named your daughter Lucy and Michael Lucy took care of you. And, Joshita, lots of options there. No, but like we learn a lot from our patients, but what I've learned from you is incredible. I guess that, my wife always gets mad when people get up and don't ever ask a question and just talk, which is what I want to do.
Well,
But
would it make you more mad if I name like if we have another kid, if I name them Gretchen instead? Would that be even more painful?
Oh man, I'll kill you. I'll take that liver back. I mean, I guess what amazed me most about you is like you never, even from the start, seemed to voice like, why is this happening to me or why me? I remember when you were our med student and you were on the list and you were in our selection meeting and complex patients were getting listed and they were going to be above you on the list because that's how the MELD system works. And you were like, they deserve it more than me. They're sicker than me. You just had this incredible ability to accept like this was your lot. You know, you're going to make the most of it, and you never had that regret. And when little things happen to me, like I bite my nail and I decide, I'm like, why me? Like what? How is that? How have you been able to maintain this like, you know, this kind of attitude of like, this happened to you. This was part of your life, and you have to deal with it. And I'm curious to know that for myself and for patients who struggle with that as well. That's the only question I could pull out of this emotional feeling I'm having about you.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I haven't really ever thought about that. I think for me, I think having had PSC for like 7 or 8 years before, I think some of that grieving and that those like questions maybe were processed earlier on for me, that having a disease that has no cure, no treatment kind of helps you to resign to the fact of that reality. And I think it ultimately just comes down to that acceptance that mourning that isn't going to change the moment I'm in now. And I think we had a really strong support system around us that really helped us to look forward, to think about what was the next step. Oh yeah, Dr. Greenberg has a question here. Can we?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Nate, it is so incredibly great to see you today, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I think just to piggyback on what Josh said, I mean, I think, you know, your story is an incredible one, and one that certainly inspires people. But I think that the key to your story is you. We all know patients that go through hardships. We all take care of people that go through a lot, but we don't all know a lot of people that do so in the way that you did and can speak to it the way that you do and share your humanity with everyone. And I think that's what makes you so personally inspiring to so many of us in this room and so many people across the country. Yours is the only Christmas card that I look forward to every year. I apologize to everyone else in the room who sends me one, but it's totally true. And so thank you for tracking us down for the last couple of years as we've moved, because you really have left an incredible imprint on so many of us. And I just would encourage you to continue to share this story with other people. Like it's just an incredible thing and an incredible gift that you've given us today. And I'm just so happy to see you. And to the rest of the graduates, congratulations on finishing. I'm incredibly proud of all of you too. I also don't have a question. I just am a fan. And so I'm so happy to see you.
Thanks so much, Nate, for being here. I also had to get control of my emotions to ask my question, but I think it's also my favorite Christmas card. Again, no offense to anyone else in the room. Also, I love seeing Lucy grow up, and I love seeing the joy in your family every year. It's really such a special gift. I think the question I have, and I think about this a lot, and as a cancer surgeon who takes care of patients with pancreatic cancer, so, you know, virtually every patient I meet, you know, despite what we like to say about surgery for pancreas cancer, it is a palliative intervention. And I'm always struck by how much peace my patients have, and I'm inspired by them all the time. And I see it as my job to try to offer hope, but, you know, not, it's always this balance. And I'd love to hear your perspective as a patient who's faced all of these issues with critical illness, of how much, how do we provide hope while still providing the right information so people can make those right decisions, how they're going to use the time that they have left, but not not taking away hope, because I think that's all we can offer to patients, and then do the best we can to help them in that journey. So I'd love to hear your perspectives on how that communication goes, because as you know, it can, fall a variety of ways of, you're offering false hope, you're doing all these things, but it feels so important to offer hope. As I think you said so beautifully, that's the currency we have.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that there's something kind about being honest with your patients. And I think that after my artery went down that last time, being honest about what the limits of what we could do for me really helped us to focus on what we had left. We left the hospital in July of 2019, expecting that over the next few months, I was going to get sicker and sicker. And we really saw that as a window that we had, that if that was the reality we faced, and that seemed like the most likely one, that we should take advantage of this time I had before things got worse. And I think offering the option to do more, to try other things would have actually taken away that window of time we had. So I think it starts with being honest with your patients about that, and being honest in your discussions about what is realistic. And I think then introducing the idea of hoping for good days, that even at my sickest, when I was in pain, I had this one of my many, many drains tucked up under my diaphragm that just drove me crazy and hurt so much. And some days all I hoped for was that one drain to not hurt so much, or just to get out of bed and go outside for a few minutes. And I think those short-term hopes really help you to feel like you're living outside of the hospital, that there's more than just the sickness.
I also want to ask a question on behalf of the residents. Obviously, you have this incredible and extremely unique experience as having gone through so much as a patient and now being a physician. And so how, kind of as a physician, not just kind of globally in life, as a physician, how do you use your experiences when you interact with patients?
It's interesting. I don't think many of my patients ever know anything about this. I think that as an ER doc, it's really hard to try to build any rapport about something more bigger like this. But I have disclosed it a couple times to patients who are in a tough spot, and tried to share some of the message of hope. I think for me, it helps me in how I talk to patients. I think maybe that's influenced by my work with Dr. Schwarzy as well, but talking to patients about what they can hope for. And as an ER doc, I do that a lot about, we're hoping that we can get you through this surgery. We're hoping we can get you through this, but we have to also think about the others. And so I think that is an important part of that. I will say that I do have a couple lessons for the patient experience that I've come away with. And if it's okay, can I? Yeah.
Of course, it's okay.
So there are things that I don't do as an ER doc, because I don't take care of patients in the hospital anymore. But I think there's 3 things that we could do that really could improve the patient experience. And one of them is kind of easy. The other 2 are maybe bigger picture things. But the first one is to let your patients eat. I was NPO for so long in this hospital, and you have to be NPO for a long time to be craving the hospital food. But so when you do tell patients that they can eat on rounds, someone should get a wow or get on Haiku on your phone and put the damn order in, because it is inhumane to be told that you can eat for the first time in weeks and then try calling down and you can't get food because the team's still rounding. So put the order in. NPO at midnight really sucks if the case isn't going to go till later in the day. And I know you're all optimistic that your case is going to get bumped and go earlier in the day. But for patients, it really sucks being NPO at midnight and then not going till late in the day. So my second one is that sleeping in the hospital is so impossible. And we do so much that makes it impossible for patients to sleep. I remember getting woken up for my 4 a.m. vitals check, the IV fluid exchange, or the IV antibiotic that went at 2 a.m. So I think as a system, thinking about how we can help patients get better rest is really vital. On B46, there was a standard practice to wake patients up and weigh them at 4 a.m. And I became notorious because I just started refusing to do it. And so the techs would know that at 11 p.m. before I go to bed, they'd bring a scale to my room and we'd do an 11 p.m. weight rather than a 4 a.m. weight. But all the things we do, You know, like I love our med students, everyone needs to learn, but pre-rounding, all these interruptions to your sleep, it makes it so miserable to be a patient when that's maybe the only bit of comfort you can have. And then finally, the third one is that as patients, we want to see you. And as a patient, I felt like I spent most of my days sitting in that room, just anxiously awaiting, like a puppy dog waiting for, the family to come home, that when's the team going to round? And you kind of feel like you're held captive in your room because I knew that the second I went for a walk, the second I went down to the cafeteria would be the time the team would come by, and then I'd be left getting the update from the nurse or someone else who heard. So I think that there's an opportunity for us to be better about this, that we can notify patients that we're going to start rounding at a certain time. You can message with the nurses, but give some schedule to your patients. And I know it's hard as surgeons that you guys are running between the OR and rounding, but we want to see you. And when we don't, it feels like we really missed out on an opportunity to get an update or to have a conversation.
I think we're at time, but we have a swag bag
Thank
for
you.
you, Nate. And thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming, and we'll